Good morning. It's like just after 3. I haven't slept. I'm dealing with obviously a lot of anxiety. Like I'm still I'm still riding that roller coaster. Something I'm learning here is I really do struggle to communicate with people. Like be able to hold a conversation at all. And it's bugging me. Like I can talk a little bit to people, but it's not just that. It's also just even they're online. It's like it seems like it's one thing when you kind of comment back and forth to each other loosely on a post or something, and then when you actually like converse with somebody, it's totally different. It feels that way even with my buddy Nate. At times, like I'm having trouble communicating, and yeah, I realized I had my fucking brain scrambled pretty fucking bad the last few years, like, and being limited to realistically being able to only communicate with like 7 people in total. That was her, my parents, my buddy Nate, my attorneys, and my doctor. And I really didn't have anybody else. I could go speak with the market guy, or I could go speak with the neighbors, which I really don't trust anymore because of some obvious shit that I just don't want to go over anymore where they're concerned. That's under the bridge with me at this point. They returned basically everything that they fucking jacked, that they weren't supposed to take. But no, I really got to somehow get away from this place. It's and everything that's gone on. It's messed my head up. I've got to. I've really got to somehow work on my communication. Like I can talk to random people at, say, like at the gas station, the store. I mean, I can almost basically spark a conversation with different people and all, and not necessarily have a problem. But then when it comes to others, it depends on who it is, and I guess you could say a short list of things. I kind of shut down on people and I can't talk. I can't respond properly. I just can't talk. And I try and I just kind of give up at that point. I can talk a little bit with friends and everything, but then I lose that. It could be even within a few sentences, start losing, not necessarily losing track of conversation, but losing the conversation, not being able to sustain it or anything. So it's like I realized I need to get out. I really need some friends when it comes down to it. I don't have anybody down here, and so many, near 5 years of not really having anybody to talk to and all that, and realizing the primary form of communication has been more or less just through social media and text. It's really like it's impacted my social skills massively, and it's not in a good way. I mean, I used to be a very social person until just all this shit that had been going on from, waking up in that hospital from that really fucked up situation that I'm still not sure of, but to everything that's gone on the last few years that I've had to completely question my reality anymore. And it's making me feel like I'm going crazy, like I'm going nuts. And it's like what I told one of my friends. I said, I'm really sorry that I can't really, I can't communicate like I used to. That my brain's broken right now. Like right here, it's one thing because I'm talking to a camera. I'm not talking to a person really, and people are just listening. And I might get comments once in a while, but there's no actual human interaction. So it's a different like situation and experience, and I'm finding I'm having a lot of trouble connecting with people. Or I don't know if that's the right term. It's just it's really bothering me. And the one person that I could really, other than my buddy Nate, that I could really communicate to about anything, like, straight fucked my head up. And so now I just, yeah. And yeah, I've got to work on my social skills and my communication abilities and all this stuff. And in the process, I've got to continue to work on like dealing with the emotional side of things because I still have to I still have to with each thing I have to process it and figure out at times not all not all the time, but at times I have to try and figure out what I'm feeling and somehow try to process it and why, that type of thing. And especially when it comes to, depending on the situation. Sorry, I'm just pulling the drawer out so I can rest my foot on it. But, all this is really, it's impacting me. I know I'll be all right. It does bother me that if I'm having this kind of trouble communicating and socializing, even with friends and people I've known, the fact that I can't even talk to most of them even on a phone, it worries me on the ability of being able to run a business because you have to be able to communicate with people. And it's not like I'm a bad communicator. I did great working in the dispensaries at times where I wouldn't shut up. I would talk to anybody and everybody. And I never had a problem getting along with people up until the whole Trump Hillary Clinton bullshit, and America fractured and everybody hated each other over who voted for who, when before that you didn't have that shit going on. I mean, yeah. Excuse me. But after being driven out of a few jobs and that creating some stigmas in my brain when it comes to dealing with other places to work because I don't want to go through that treatment again. And even though I did well with 90% of 90% of my the customers I work with, I still got I have this thing when it comes to people. When I get to know, as I'm getting to know them, they're like immediately my friend. I immediately, I give too much trust in people that I'm just starting to know. And as I get to know them, my friends, I start to treat them more like family. And so then I will love them like they're my family, even if it's not necessarily, returned, but to them it's just, we're friends, coworkers, that type of thing. I'm like that with was like that with my friends growing up in school and everything, because I didn't really have a family growing up. By the time I was like 9, 10 years old, I didn't have anybody. I had a couple family members, but those that we interacted with, mainly on my mom's side, they hated me because of my brother, and then followed with my mom's shit talking. And her excuse was, I have the right to talk to people, to vent. And during that process, what she did, she demonized me so bad that my family hated me. They thought I was just nothing but a troublemaker. So I didn't really have a family. Plus, the way they all talked shit about each other, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. And a series of other things that had gone on. Do I hate them? No. I hated what was going on, and I didn't want any part of it. And it got to the point that so many years have gone by, I don't know them. I'm blood related, but that's not my family. I don't know them. And so, anyways, when it comes to like friends, coworkers, they kind of became my family. But then when I started getting treated in some pretty fucked up ways and getting targeted at my jobs by my coworkers, and even when even the owners and my bosses knew what was going on, they were taking part of it. And so I became more and more, I usually say, defensive and more guarded and not working, because yeah. And then with my back and my body doing what it began doing with the NF2 and really starting to really go downhill, and I couldn't even really do that shit really anymore. That's when everything got worse. Like everything. I didn't just like lose friends and family and my kids and all this shit through all of this crap that's gone on in the last few years. I lost me. I lost my ability to focus on things more. I lost my ability to socialize properly. I've lost my ability to communicate. I've lost my I lost my drive. I lost my inspirations. I lost my motivations. I lost everything here. And when I look back on some of the vids I have from, 10 years, a couple of the vids I have from 10 years ago and seeing who I was then, I don't recognize myself anymore. It's like, honestly, when I see that person, I wish I was that person again. I was happy, I was laid back, I was easygoing, and I didn't have all this chaos necessarily going on then. It was a short moment that things were doing okay. Yeah, I was still healing and physically and mentally from the way my wife left back then. But for most part, I at that moment from those vids that I've got, it was that year after it was that same year. It was shortly after my brother died, and so I was trying. I had my friend Nacho and all. I heard a lot from losing my brother. I still hurt from that, but shit. But I was still a pretty, for most part, happy person. I wasn't nearly as fucking broken as I am now, right now, and have been for the last, few years. But God dang, I still miss that side of me where I was always, for most part, happy go lucky, no matter what was going on. I missed my brother. I hurt a lot. I'm still grieving where he's concerned. And so, because there's just a lot around that on what happened, he was realistically the other than my buddy Nate, he was the only friend that actually really, you know, from elementary school, he was my first real best friend. And I didn't have a shit ton of friends. I got along with everybody. I didn't really have enemies, but I did have bullies. And so, yeah, I never had a problem getting along with the girls in school and all that stuff. They were just friends. And even now, I know the difference, whether, when it comes to females, there's friends, and then there's, your girlfriend or your fiance or your spouse, and that's how they are. And if they end up becoming more than a friend and I'm already in a relationship with someone, they become family. They become my sister. If they're older than me, they become like a mom. So I really didn't have that like that solid family dynamic going on growing up. It was very fucked up family, very broken. But no, I realize I've lost a whole lot of myself and who I am the last few years, and it's like, how do I get that back, or can I? I really did lose myself over the last few years, and with all this nonstop shit, like it broke me. And as I'm starting to talk more, starting to talk a little more and more to some of my friends, old friends and stuff like that, I'm realizing I'm having trouble communicating. I'm having trouble actually carrying a conversation. And where I went years where I had people around that I could talk to, I didn't really realize how important it was for me to really be able to communicate and converse with other people till especially the last few years, being as lonely as I was this whole time. Even though I had so many here, I felt so fucking alone. And I realized because I had all those years of where I still had that kind of constant ability to communicate with people. I was able to go, I either had, my son around, to talk to, my wife, and all that at the time, or my current ex, or, my buddy Jess, or my buddy Nate, or my friend Nacho, or my friend Heather, or, I had people to talk to back then. And then after my brother and my sister passed away, it was just everybody vanished. And after that was just pretty much my buddy Nate, and then her. And eventually it just, I really didn't have anybody. No, I decided, because I've been sitting here just kind of in a, you know, just battling with, between insomnia, anxiety, and just, I know I need to go to sleep. I decided of all things to go ahead and start working on my book. Well, not my book, but at least my part of the book that I'm working on with others. Right now, that's only up until the point that we moved in with my grandma. I was back when I was like 4, towards the end of, like, right around that summer of 1985, I want to say is when we moved to my grandma's. Plus, doing this, it's bringing up some old, a lot of old, like, not really emotions, because as a child, I didn't, and especially a child who was on spectrum and didn't even know I was on spectrum. I just always had, I just always had the battle with the fact that I was always different from everyone else. And I did notice that I got treated different from everyone else. And so I didn't understand a lot of that stuff until as I've gotten older and become an adult, and I look back on some of those things. It's like I feel differently than I did then because I understand what was going on. And so when writing this, I'm trying to write it from my perspective of back then, and not just from memory. And, I won't start bringing up, obviously some of it's already been brought up, some of the things, but it won't be brought into directness until basically when I get to the point when I'm around 9, 10 years old, when everything started coming out, and that's when I learned what had happened to me. And that's when I began going through a lot of therapy where my brother was concerned. But then I got to have the pleasure of seeing an old video where my mom was concerned with that doctor back then, and how my mom was acting, and how she was talking about things. And then realizing back then, yeah, I was obviously on spectrum. I obviously was always on spectrum. And the fact that she could sit there with a smile about me being abused by my brother. And at first I tried to deny it because I Yeah, I didn't want my brother getting in trouble, and I was afraid I was going to get in trouble for getting him in trouble. Because I used to get my ass spanked just by trying to joke with my mom as a kid. And so I was afraid to, to do much. There was moments there. Yeah, I remember. What was it? Was it? I think there was only a couple times where that I actually ratted on my brothers, and that one time there was when my brother threw a rock at a car and then tried to make me take the blame because he thought that because I was younger than him. I was only like 6 maybe at the time. It was first grade. So yeah, I was like 5, 6 at the time. And it was shortly after we moved to Oregon City. And he threw this rock at this lady's car and tried to blame me, thinking that I would get in less trouble. And I'm going, I mean, I was in immediate tears, everything. Like, no, I did not fucking do that. It was because my mom would spank me with belts, wooden spoons, wooden spatulas, the wooden meat hammer once. Her bare fucking hand just as hard as she fucking could. And my mom enjoyed it. She laughed. Almost every other fucking time I got my ass whooped, she would laugh. And I'd have my aunts right there, like particularly my aunt Lindell at one point, a lot of times was right there. My other cousin Jake was right there. And they'd get to sit and watch me get my bare ass beat right in front of them. And they'd all laugh. You shouldn't have been, joking with your mom like that. Come here, Jay. Let's get your PJs on. No, I don't want to. Why don't you come make me? No, no, nothing. It was just a straight smile, just being, a smart ass, joking with my mom at that time. And a lot of people sit there and go, "Oh, well, at that age, kids don't understand." Yes, they do. My younger son was a sarcastic, joking little shit at 3, 4 years old too. And yes, kids are capable of sarcasm and humor. And when my mom did that, I don't know, yeah. Between my grandma's cabin up at Mount Hood over holidays when we, primarily like Christmas when we'd have my aunts and uncles and cousins and all of us stay at my grandma's cabin for Christmas, for a family Christmas, only to, every year get my ass whooped. There was like 2, 3 years there. Each year going there, I'd get my ass whooped in front of everyone. And then, I would get some of the most fucked up gifts from my mom. And even as a kid back then, like some of the gifts I got, I was like, why did I get this? Why do I have this? Even some of my cousins were like, what the fuck? Goes from getting, like, for example, one Christmas I had gotten like this little battery operated, noisy little sci fi car. I feel like it was the car off of The Last Starfighter. That's what it reminded me of, and I'm pretty sure that's what it was from. But then the next thing, the only big gift sitting there, it was the biggest one that I had sitting there from my mom and my family. I'd gotten, like the car. I had gotten like a Sylvester Stallone over the top, like, it was like a 12-inch, like, hollow plastic, like, action figure type thing. And, a couple other things, socks, clothes, some candy, books. But then the big gift, I go to open that and it's this doll with the fucking pony. And I'm looking at it like, what the fuck did you, what the fuck? I didn't want it. My cousins saw that, and even a couple of my cousins still remember that to this day, and they're like, your mom bought you some of the most fucked up gifts. Like, she thought, like, she didn't just buy you boy toys. She, like, would buy you, like, half your toys were girl toys. Like, she wanted a little girl. And I know. My mom basically, obviously up until I was old enough to dress myself, and I would dress myself, but my mom was the one always picking my clothes out up until my first year of high school. I didn't get to choose my stuff. I was given options. I was never allowed to be my own thinker. And then once I got to high school and I started seeing how other people got to, in essence, the other kids got to be kind of like more like themselves. They got to dress themselves. They got to do all this stuff. I started rebelling on my mom and them. And then I started getting, basically, I was dealing with the abuse at that point. Coffee cups full of hot coffee thrown at me. Having my mom picking up a guitar, an acoustic guitar, threatening to beat me in the head with it and killing me with it. Having my mom grab me by the hair, wringing my head back and forth, telling me how much she wished I was dead, and then my dad getting in the middle of it, telling me to stop. Looking back, if I had, I obviously wouldn't have known it then, but learning the things I have now about my relationship, I now understand why I've always said that I don't want the relationship that my mom and dad has. Or I should say had, because that dynamic has changed since my mom's had her strokes. Here's the thing, I love my mom. That's the problem that, when I talk about this stuff, people probably think, oh, you hate your mom. No, I love my mom. And I recognize my mom did some really, really fucked up things when I was growing up. I can't I can't say why she did it. I can't see why she didn't do some of the things that she should have as a mom. I feel like I was more or less my mom's, not just, little action figure. I felt like I was her little sacrificial lamb to get attention from family and all that. And when my brother went to prison for what he did, you know, I knew back then that there was only one person he didn't get charged with, and the whole thing was because he couldn't remember who the other victim was, but they knew there was another. It turned out that I was that victim that he never got charged for, and I was abused by him from the age of 3 to the age of 5 at my starting in Virginia and then into my grandma's home. And the fact that even that brother of mine who abused me, ended up was being abused by one of my mom and dad's family friends, by their kids or whatever. And so that's how I'm definitely aware how a lot of people who get abused in those situations, if they don't get the right help or proper help, that type of stuff, they themselves can very likely end up continuing that disease, that abuse onto the next person. And I give my parents credit that as soon as my mom, all that came out, yeah, my mom had I was in a hospital when that came out. I was thrown in it. I was between the grades of between 4th and 5th grade, I was thrown into Cedar Hills Hospital that summer because I had accidentally started my house on fire, my folks' place on fire, and it was an accident. I still remember that every second of that moment. And I got thrown in that fucking place, and I got to spend 2 months of it on a single floor, never getting to smell the fresh air, while I got to watch all these other kids getting to leave and go with their families. And it got to a point I couldn't recognize my grandpa anymore. I couldn't recognize a couple of family members that would come visit. But it was there that when I began talking to my doctor about what my brother did to me. And it was that doctor that my mom had her interview with, which then led to being the interview used to my doctor getting onto Northwest Reports with Lars Larson at the time, which was the same interview that they brought me in, promising me a t-shirt, not fully understanding the repercussions at 12 years old of what happens when you do an interview like that. Because sure, in elementary school, kids are still mean then, but they're a little bit more understanding. And I was under the understanding it wasn't one of those things that would be re-aired. That was aired when I was in the 5th grade. I was 11 years old. And it was that interview that helped springboard my doctor into national recognition. I got exploited by my doctor. Do I hate her for it? No. I didn't understand it as a kid. And so even now, as an adult, it doesn't really necessarily affect me that much, but it still bothers me to look back and realize that my doctor, my mom, all that was all exploiting me. And they were exploiting my struggles. They were exploiting the things I was battling, when it came to socializing with other kids and other people, when it came to family, when it came to relations with anybody. I mean, from the age of like 10 on, I was pretty much the only child. I got till I was 8 years old. Yeah, 89 to 90. So I was 8, 9 years old when my brother Joe went into the service. He went to the Navy. And then my brother John, it was just like a year or so later, he ended up in the state hospital. So it was like, I was raised an only child, like, from that point on. And yeah, I didn't have anybody. I didn't have aunts, uncles, cousins. They all hated me. And my mom's shit talking didn't help at all either. And then all they heard was bad shit. They didn't hear anything good. The fact that they didn't even know I was abused by my brother so fucking much from the ages of 3 to 5. My mom kept it a secret. And then it was that back in 2020 when after I had to abandon home because I got abandoned here, and I had lost the use of my legs for a moment there, and when I was able to at least regain enough strength in my legs to hobble to the truck and get my animals in there and drive back north to abandon home, and then they decided to come back around again after they kept leaving me. Then they decided to come back around. And anyways, we were driving down to my brother's, my older brother, not my oldest, but my older brother, to take him a food box. The only time he'd contact my parents is when he needed a food box or them to pay his rent. On the way down, we were talking about what my brother did and all that stuff. My brother sat back, or not my brother, my mom, my mother, was sitting behind me in the car or in the vehicle, and blatantly turns around and, while we were talking about it, goes, yeah, he never got charged for you. He got away with that, and, I'm happy that he did because he served his time. I think he served enough time. And I looked at it, I was like, so I was the victim that he never got charged for. That you told me that they weren't sure who the other victim was. Yeah, God and karma answered that eventually with him getting brain cancer. I've brought this up before. And he's, survived it. I love my brother and forgive him. I'll never trust him again. I'll never forget what happened. That's why I don't really have that relationship. And then after how he started treating my mom and dad after my mom had her stroke, I severed that relationship with him. And with everything that's been going on, especially over the last few months, I don't want that relationship with him at this point right now. or probably ever, because I've had a lot of old shit get like bubble up, and I just, yeah. No, I'm sitting here working on this, and I decided to stop for now because it's starting to get to the harder parts of my life, and I don't want anybody to think that I've had a worse life than anybody else. I just don't believe that. It's just I did go through a lot of shit growing up, and I've had to I've had to cope and deal with it. I had doctors and therapists and stuff, but that's all, realistically, when I look back, that's all I could turn to. Otherwise, I had my friends, but I really couldn't turn to my friends. My friends knew about what's going on from things that they saw, and I didn't really I didn't talk about the shit that was going on at home. And when it came to the abuses that I went through, they didn't know about that shit for a long time. Which wasn't until my closest friends, like Jess and Nate and all, they eventually learned. But a lot of them had no clue about the shit that was going on, except for, like I said, what they witnessed themselves. So even though I can pound out a chapter or so, 1 to 2 chapters in a night, I was stopping right there. I'm having to work with Notepad on the computer because right now, with the internet being as slow as it is, because I can only use the mobile hotspot thing from my tablet. I don't want to use it up on my phone. I'm having to use Notepad. I'm pretty sure here later at some point, if I can, even at least get Word, so I can see, page lengths, or how many pages I've typed, that would be great. So I gotta figure out on basically Notepad on those settings, if I can do that, if I can add the page things. But no, I'm just trying to refocus some of this a bit, allow some of this out, and hopefully, maybe, I can't say that my experiences are necessarily going to help anybody, but if there are people out there that can relate to some of this stuff, and it helps them realize that they weren't the only ones, or that even though shit, doesn't matter how fucked up things can get, you don't have to choose the option of becoming the people that did the things to them. But anyways, I'm gonna try and get some rest here in a few minutes. I'm battling, like I said, a lot of depression and just a lot of anxiety, everything, and I just, I've got to wait a little longer until this place sells, because we're transitioning out of dealing with the third party bullshit. I've got to wait, like, at this point, 7 days. So next Wednesday is when this place will be relisted properly at a proper price and all that awesome good nature stuff. But till then, at some point I gotta go. I'm gonna go visit my folks for a couple days before I come back, and then I'm not sure what I'm gonna do from there, because I realize I come back, and by that point, let's see here. By the time I come back, it'd be like halfway through November. So if I go back up there at the end of the month, I'd only be there for like a month and then I'd come back. So, I mean, part of me is just, I don't know. Part of me is weighing out whether or not just to stay here after I go up and visit the folks and just stay here till the place, continue to stay until the place sells or whatever. So, anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a good evening and a good morning. I know it's morning time, so yeah. Thanks for watching.